It's the silence that gets you. I don't mean the quiet kind, the peaceful kind you might get on a Sunday morning with a cup of coffee and the newspaper. No, I'm talking about a silence that has weight. It presses on your ears, fills the back of your throat. For 19 years, this house was a symphony of noise. The rumble of video game explosions from Harry's room, the bang of the back door as he came and went, the constant, comforting rhythm of the washer and dryer, and his voice, always his voice, calling out, "Hey, Mom, where's my—" from some other room. My job title was Harry's mom. It was a full-time, overtime, all the time position, and I was damn good at it. It was my magnum opus, my reason for breathing. Now he's at college, 312 kilometers away, and the silence is so loud it makes my teeth ache. I spend my days cleaning things that are already clean. I'll stand in his empty bedroom where the only thing left of him is a faint indentation on the mattress and the smell of his laundry detergent lingering in the curtains, and I'll just dust. I'll run a cloth over his desk, his shelves, the windowsill. It's a way to feel useful, I guess. A way to pretend I'm still tending to something, to someone. My only quirk these days is that I talk to myself. Not in a fun, theatrical way, but in small, desperate whispers. "Okay, Kayla, time to do the dishes." "That's enough, Kayla. Stop staring out the window." I am the only one left to manage. The day he left feels like the end of the world. Not his world, of course. His was just beginning. But mine. He hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack, whispered, "I love you, Mom," and then he was gone. I watched his beat-up sedan disappear down the street, and it felt like an amputation. I went back inside and the house was just a building. The color had been bled from the walls. I know what you're thinking. Empty nest syndrome. Every mother goes through it. But this isn't sadness. It's like a hollowing out. It's the feeling that my very identity has dissolved. He didn't just leave. His departure ripped the scaffolding out of my life, and I'm just a pile of plaster and dust on the floor. My depression isn't just in my head. It's a physical thing, a leak, and it gives me these god-awful nightmares. At first, they were about my sadness becoming a physical thing, a black sludge that seeped from the vents of this house. It would pool on the floor, travel through the pipes, and follow him. I'd have dreams where it floods his dorm room while he sleeps, a tide of my own misery rising around him, and he can't breathe. I'd wake up gasping, my heart hammering, convinced that my own pain was going to somehow reach out and hurt him. But the nightmare that finally broke me wasn't about sludge. It was worse. It was mundane. I dreamed I was on the phone with Harry, and he was telling me about his day, a boring lecture, a bad cafeteria lunch. But while he spoke, I could see his dorm room, and the wall behind him was cracking. A thin, dark line, like a spider's web, spreading from the corner. I tried to warn him, but my voice wouldn't work. I was screaming, but no sound came out. The crack widened, and I knew, with the cold certainty of dreams, that the entire building was about to collapse on him because I wasn't there to hold it together. I woke up with my own silent scream stuck in my throat, drenched in sweat. My new purpose crystallized in that moment of terror. I have to protect my son from my own broken mind. I have to stop the leak. You'd do anything for your child, right? You'd stand in front of a bus for them. But what do you do when the bus is you? I called him right after the dream about the crack. It was almost midnight, but I didn't care. He answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep but patient, the way I taught him to be. "Mom, everything okay?" "Fine, honey, fine. I had a bad dream." My voice was shaky, and I hated it. I didn't want him to hear the cracks in me. I could hear voices in the background, the familiar sound of a video game, someone laughing. His life, so full and vibrant, was happening right then, completely separate from me. He was in his world, a world I built for him, and now I was the danger lurking just outside of it. "It's all good here, Mom, don't worry," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. He was humoring me, the worried mother calling in the middle of the night. "I gotta go, or in the middle of a tournament. Love you." He hung up. And in that moment, the dream felt more real than his reassurances. The bus was me, my worry, my useless, toxic sadness was the crack in the wall. That's how I found the clinic. Tucked away in a search result late one night after the phone call. It wasn't a place for therapy or pills. It promised something else, something radical. The website was sleek and minimal, all soft blues and reassuring fonts. It promised a procedure for existential clarity, a way to turn off the parts that hurt so you can just exist without the noise, without the pain. I saw it as the only way to save Harry from me. But it was in another country, impossibly expensive. My hope cratered. Then, scrolling deeper into the internet's dark corners, I found a name on a forum, a thread about off-label solutions for severe anxiety. Metamorphosis, a street name for a new designer drug that promised to do what the clinic did chemically, to shut down the parts of the brain that cause anxiety and depression. A chemical cure in a tiny pill. It took me 2 days and most of my savings to find a guy who knew a guy. The transaction happened in a sterile, brightly lit coffee shop that made the whole thing feel even more sordid and desperate. He was a kid, no older than Harry, with hollow eyes and a twitchy leg. He slid the little plastic baggie across the table without making eye contact. The pills were small and gray, like tiny, smooth pebbles. Back home, the house felt colder, emptier than ever. I sat at the kitchen table, the little plastic baggie sitting in a pool of light from the overhead fixture. I held one of the pills in my palm. It felt heavier than it should, dense with possibility and dread. This was my last resort. My last-ditch medical experiment on myself to save Harry from the wreckage of his mother. My greatest fear, becoming an unheard, unthinking object, was suddenly my only hope. I looked at the phone, thought about calling him one last time, but stopped myself. What would I say? I swallowed the pill with a glass of water and waited for the silence in my head to finally stop for good. At first, nothing happened. I sat at the table, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs, waiting for a switch to be flipped. Then a warmth spread through my chest, slow and pleasant, like the first sip of hot tea on a cold day. The sharp edges of my anxieties started to feel soft, padded. The next few hours were a blur, a chaotic slideshow of my life flashing behind my eyes. I saw Harry's first steps, not as a fond, distant memory, but as if I were reliving it, feeling the rough texture of the living room carpet on my knees as I held my arms out to him. I felt the sting of a forgotten argument with my ex-husband, the bone-deep weariness of a sleepless night with a sick toddler, the pure joy of Harry's 5th birthday party, all jumbled together, intense and overwhelming. Then came the spin. The room tilted violently, the checked pattern on the kitchen floor swirling into a nauseating vortex. My stomach churned and the floor rushed up to meet me. The last thing I remember is the cool, solid press of the hardwood against my cheek. Then there was a light. Not a bright, heavenly light. It was a dull, electric hum that was also me. I had no body, no arms, no legs, no mouth to scream with. I was just a point of view, a consciousness trapped inside a shell of glass. I was looking down. The perspective was all wrong, static, high and wide. I could see a whole room beneath me, a messy room with clothes on the floor, an open laptop on a desk, and a young man with familiar brown hair asleep in a bed. Harry. It was his dorm room. I was the light fixture on his ceiling. Panic, pure and absolute, tried to erupt, but I had no heart to pound, no lungs to heave. There was only the silent, unblinking, eternal hum of my own existence as a light bulb. I was a prisoner, and the prison was me. I woke up on my kitchen floor, gasping, my limbs tangled and aching. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching dust motes dancing in the air. It was morning. My first thought wasn't relief. It was a question, a sliver of ice in my gut. Was that real? It couldn't have been. It was a hallucination, a side effect of a powerful, illegal drug. I stumbled to my feet, my body screaming in protest, and practically ran to the trash can. I threw the rest of the pills in the trash can, burying them under coffee grounds and eggshells, as if I could hide the evidence from myself. I spent the day in a frantic state of denial, cleaning the house with a fury I hadn't felt in months, scrubbing floors and washing windows, trying to physically wipe the memory away. But I couldn't escape the feeling. The hum. That low, constant vibration seemed to linger in my skull, the unblinking view. That night, I lay in bed staring at my own bedroom ceiling, at the simple white fixture there. I thought about the dust motes I'd seen dancing in the cone of light I was projecting in his room. I thought about the muffled sound of Harry rolling over in his sleep, the rustle of his sheets. The details were too specific, too mundane to be a simple dream. My desperation to save him had been replaced by a new, terrifying obsession. I had to know. I went back to the kitchen in the dark. I dug the little gray pill out of the garbage, washed the filth from it under the tap, and stared at it. This was the point of no return. A voice in my head, the last shred of my sanity, begged me not to, but the need to confirm what I'd seen, or disprove it and prove I was just losing my mind, was stronger. I was choosing to step back into the prison just to check if the bars were real. I swallowed the pill.
The spin came faster this time, a brutal, immediate lurch. The world dissolved into a nauseating swirl of color, and then the hum. I was back. The same ceiling-down view, the same unblinking static perspective. Harry was at his desk, headphones on, typing. I could see the top of his head, the way his hair fell over his forehead. Time stretched, becoming thick and slow like honey. An hour of his life, an hour of him clicking a mouse and reading a screen, felt like a year to me. I was a silent, powerless god watching from a glass heaven, trapped in the agony of my own creation, unable to look away, unable to speak, unable to do anything but watch and be. The horror wasn't in a monster or a ghost. The horror was this. There was no transition this time, no gentle fade back to my kitchen floor. There was only the hum and the view. For 7 years, that was my world. Time as I knew it ceased to exist. It was measured in the searing, incandescent heat of being on and the waiting, absolute cold of being off. It was measured in the seasons I could only guess at by the clothes Harry wore far below me. The first year was a silent, unending scream. I was a prisoner in my own mind, rattling the bars of a cage made of glass and filament. I tried to flicker, to will myself to send a message in Morse code. I am here! Mom is here! But I had no control. I was just a circuit, completed or broken by a switch on the wall. I watched Harry navigate his freshman year, saw him make friends, stress over exams, and call his girlfriend. I heard his side of our phone calls, his voice a muffled, distant rumble. "Yeah, Mom's fine," he'd say into his phone. "Just quiet these days." The irony was a physical burn, even without a body to feel it. By the third year, the screaming stopped. A horrifying resignation set in. My identity, the one I had feared losing, was dissolving under the relentless heat and the crushing monotony. The memories of my body, of walking, of touching, of tasting, began to feel like a story I'd read about someone else. I was the light bulb. That was my function. My purpose was to illuminate the life I was no longer a part of. I watched him grow up from my perch in the ceiling. I saw the posters on his wall, changed from bands to movie art. I watched him bring home a girl for the first time, and I burned with a helpless, impotent jealousy and shame, forced to illuminate the scene. I was an unheard, unseen, unthinking object. My worst fear had become my reality. During the 5th year, I tried to escape by forgetting. I focused on the dust motes dancing in my own light. I counted the scuff marks on the floor. I tried to unknow my son, to see him as just a shape, a collection of movements below. Because to remember he was my son, the boy I raised, my magnum opus, was an agony too great to bear. But I couldn't. Every mannerism, every frustrated sigh, every laugh was a hook in my soul, pulling me back to the woman I used to be. The end began in the 7th year. It started as a tremor, a flicker in my filament that matched the frantic, dying pulse of my own hope. My light, once steady, began to waver. I was failing. My empty, worn-out soul could no longer power the prison. One evening, as Harry sat at his desk studying for his final exams, I flickered violently. Once, twice. He looked up, annoyed. He flicked the switch off and on. I spluttered back to a dim orange life. He sighed and went back to his book. For an hour I held on, my light growing weaker, dimmer. The heat was fading, replaced by a terminal cold. Then, with a final, desperate surge, I flashed bright, a last silent cry into the void, and went dark with a soft pop. Silence. For a few minutes, he worked in the glow of his laptop. Then, with an exasperated noise, he stood up, dragged his chair over, and climbed onto it. I watched him approach from below, his face cast in shadow, his hand reaching for me. This was it, the ultimate act of being discarded. My son, my reason for being, was about to dispose of a broken object without a second thought.
his fingers wrapped around my glass shell. They were warm. It was the first physical contact I had felt in 7 years. He twisted. My world spun in a nauseating spiral. I was being unscrewed from my reality, detached from the only existence I knew. The shock of it, the finality of being replaced, was a jolt so profound it shattered the prison. I gasped, a raw, ragged sound that tore through a throat I hadn't used in an eternity. My eyes flew open. The light was blinding. Not a single bulb, but long, sterile fluorescent tubes set into a white tiled ceiling. The air smelled of antiseptic and lemon-scented cleaner. I was lying on my back, a thin, starchy blanket over me. A woman in blue scrubs stood by my bed, checking a machine that was beeping with a steady, rhythmic pulse. My pulse. My real, physical pulse. "Welcome back," she said, her voice calm and gentle. She didn't seem surprised to see my eyes open. "You gave us a bit of a scare. You've been unconscious for about 3 hours." 3 hours? The words didn't make sense. I stared at the ceiling, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought they would break. 7 years. I watched him finish college. I saw him get his first real job. I watched him pack up that dorm room for the last time. 7 years of silent, burning, helpless observation. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. My fear, my grief, my desperate need to protect him from myself had been so powerful it had bent time, creating its own perfect 7-year hell inside my own head, all while I was just lying on my kitchen floor for a few hours. The nurse continued talking, something about an anomalous reaction to an unknown substance, about how lucky I was that I'd left my front door unlocked and a neighbor had seen me through the window and called for help. I couldn't hear her. All I could hear was the hum. It was quieter now, a faint echo in the back of my mind, but it was there, the ghost of the light bulb. I had wanted to stop being a mother so my sadness wouldn't hurt my son. I'd been so afraid of becoming an unheard, unthinking object in the corner of his life. And my brain, in its desperate, broken attempt to give me what I wanted, had made that fear literal. It had turned me into nothing at all, a forgotten object in the corner of his life. I was back in my body, but I knew with a chilling certainty that a part of me was still there, in that dorm room. A ghost in the machine, a silent, eternal hum forever watching from the ceiling. I had closed my eyes on my kitchen floor, a mother terrified of her own sadness. I opened them in a hospital bed, something less, something fractured. The leak was stopped, I suppose. I didn't feel that overwhelming sadness anymore. I didn't feel much of anything. Just a hollow space inside me, and the low, constant electrical hum of the part of my soul I'd left behind.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. Like and subscribe for more nightmares. Your support keeps the darkness from consuming this channel, so we can face the next terrifying story together. Don't be left in the dark.